Today class, we are now going to discuss about the modes of reproduction in plants. Last meeting, we discussed about the reproductive parts and functions of the flower. As you have learned, we have four major parts and two accessory parts of a flower. So the two accessory parts of the flower is, for number one, we have the peduncle. So this is the peduncle, or what you call pedicel. Next accessory part is what you call the receptacle. This is the receptacle. So let's now move to the four major parts of a flower, which is the sepals. So this is the sepals. If you have a group of sepals, that is what you call the calyx. Next major parts is we have the petals, and this is the petals. If you have a group, or you can see a group of petals, you can call it corolla. Next is we have what you call the stamen. So the stamen is the male reproductive part of the flower, and this is the stamen. And the stamen consists of two parts. We have the anther and we have the filament. And the next major part of the flower is what you call the pistil. So this is the pistil. The pistil is the female reproductive part of the flower that consists of four parts. We have the stigma, the style, the ovary, and inside the ovary, it is called the ovule. Okay, everybody, look around you. What can you see? Very good. You can see plants because plants are all around us. Plants can be a flowering plants and it can be also a non-flowering plants. The production of new individuals from their parents is known as reproduction. But my question now is, how do plants reproduce? So, like humans and animals, flowers come in many different sizes, shapes, and colors, but that all share the same common structural parts that play a functional role in the reproduction process. Plants carry out reproduction in many ways, such as from seeds, spores, or other plant parts. So in other words, there are several ways or mode by which plants reproduce their offspring. These are categorized into two types. It's either asexual reproduction or asexual reproduction. When we say sexual reproduction, new plants are obtained from seed, while in asexual reproduction, it is obtained without the production of what you call seeds. So in this lesson class, this will help you understand better the different modes of reproduction in flowering and non-flowering plants. Specifically, you will differentiate self-pollination from cross-pollination and then describe the different modes of reproduction in flowering and non-flowering plants that's like ferns and moss. Plants reproduce in different mode of reproduction. Plants can be reproduced through sexually or it can be reproduced asexually. So, in sexual reproduction in plants, it occurs through what you call pollination and fertilization, while in asexual reproduction, it occurs through natural vegetative and artificial vegetative. First to discuss is all about sexual reproduction. So what is sexual reproduction? So sexual reproduction among plants happens through the transfer of pollen grains from the anther into the stigma. So as we've learned a while ago, kukuha muna siya dun sa anther, yung mga pollen grains, tapos masushoot dun sa stigma. That is a sexual reproduction. So, in sexual reproduction, the anther serves as the male part while the stigma function as the female part. And this process is called pollination. So, parang sa fertilization na din yan. Pag nagsama na, yung tinatawag na stigma and the anther, papunta si anther dun sa stigma, that is fertilization or what you call pollination. So sa flowers lang, tawag dun ay pollination. Ayan. Pupunta dun sa ovule. So, next is, what is pollination? Ano nga ba itong pollination na to? So, as you can see here in the diagram, we have the structures on how this flower pollinate. That is pollination. Just observe the diagram. Okay. So, pollination, this happens when the pollen grains from the male anther of a flower is transferred to the female stigma. So, as I always said to you, yung pollen grains ay pupunta doon sa stigma, doon sa tuktok, hanggang ibababa niya doon sa ovule. So, in pollination class, it is usually, this is brought about by wind, insects, birds, water, animals, and other agents that aid in the sexual reproduction of plants through agents of pollination. So, yung mga yan class, yung mga wind, yung butterfly, birds, and water, animals, and even us, human, can be an agents of pollination. So, why agents? Sila yung dahilan, sila yung rason kung bakit napopollinate yung flower, kung bakit nabubuntis yung flower, kung bakit the flower will become a fruit or a seed later on. So, yan yung mga dahilan kung bakit mabubuntis yung bulaklak. And that is pollination. Yun yung mga agent na nakakatulong kung saan magkakaroon ng pollination ng isang flower. So, we have two kinds of pollination. We have the self-pollination and we have cross-pollination. Ano kayong pinagkaiba ng dalawang to? So, let's see. So, in self-pollination, as you can see here, self, sarili mo, occurs when the pollen from the anther is deposited on the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. So, kailangan ikaw mismo ang gagawa ng paraan at the same flower na mabubuntis yung flower o magpo-pollinate yung flower. So, that is self-pollination. Sarili mong sikap, kumbaga. While we have also cross-pollination. So, itong self-pollination na to, ang pwedeng agent dito, pwedeng tao, pwedeng wind, pwedeng, lahat ng mga agent pwede dyan. Agent of pollination. Pwedeng maging self-pollination ang tawag doon. And while in cross-pollination, as you can see in the diagram, cross-pollination, ipupunta niya kukunin niya yung anther, yung mga pollen grains sa isang flower, ilalagay niya sa kabilang flower. And that is what you call cross-pollination. So, ano nga ba to? So, is the transfer of pollen from one another to the stigma of another flower on a different individual of the same species. So, kinuha niya yung mga pollen grains sa ibang bulaklak at inilagay niya doon sa ibang bulaklak. So, anong pwede dyan na agent? Pwedeng yung butterfly, yung mga dumadapo doon, tapos inilalagay hindi nila na sinasadya na nilalagay nila sa ibang flower. Kasi nga yung mga flower, di ba, madali silang mga insekto, nakaka-attract yung corolla niya, yung mga petals na nakaka-attract para dapuan yung bulaklak at matransfer sa iba't ibang bulaklak. And so that is cross-pollination. So this is how sexual reproduction or a pollination process. So ito yung proseso kung paano mapopollinate ang isang bulaklak. So first thing is, once a pollen grain enters the stigma, it swells and grows a long tube that travels through the style until it reaches the ovary. The tube releases the sperm cells into the ovule to fertilize the egg cell. The fertilized egg cell and the ovule itself develops into a seed. The ovary then enlarges and thickens its walls to become a fruit. This will be the receptacle for the seeds. These seeds can eventually grow into a new plant. So that is in sexual reproduction or how pollination occurs. Plants do not only grow from seeds. There is another way of growing plants. It is through what you call asexual reproduction. So what is asexual reproduction? So asexual reproduction produces individuals that are genetically identical to the parent plant. It occurs as a new plants grow from vegetative structures such as stems, leaves, bulbs, and roots. So in other words, hindi niya kinakailangan ng seed, hindi niya kinakailangan ng anther, ng filament, hindi niya kinakailangan ng tinatawag na pollination. So in asexual reproduction, kahit kumuha ka lang sa kanyang stem, sa kanyang leaves, sa kanyang bulbs, o sa kanyang roots, mapaparami mo yung kanyang mga anak, yung kanyang offspring. And we have two parts or two types or kinds rather of asexual reproduction. We have the natural vegetative reproduction and artificial vegetative reproduction. First to discuss is all about the natural vegetative. So in natural vegetative reproduction is any form of asexual reproduction occurring in plants in which a new plant grows and develops naturally without human intervention. It occurs when an ancillary bud through into a lateral shoot and develops into its own roots. So new plants may sprout from stems, roots, or leaves of a parent plant. Modified stems are most often the source of vegetative plant and propagation. And we have a lot of process of this natural vegetative reproduction. We have the runners, we have the bulbs, we have the plantlets, we have the suckers, we have the rhizomes, and we have tubers. So, 6 po yung paraan ng natural vegetative reproduction. So, first we will discuss about what is runners. So, runners. So, a runner, or what you call the stolon, is a horizontal stem with buds that grow along the surface of the ground, where buds from a runner touch the soil, roots, stems, and leaves develop to form a new independent plant. It can be cut, and the new plant can be transferred to another place for it to continue growing. So, heto yung mga umaakyat, yung gumagapang na mga damo-damo o mga plants. What are the examples of these runners? We have the Carabao grass, we have the strawberry. So, yan yung mga halimbawa ng runners. We have also Bermuda grass or a Carabao grass. So, those are examples of runners. Next is bulbs. So, what is bulbs? So, is a round, fleshy stem found underneath the ground, surrounded by fleshy leaves. Its function is to store food and propagate. Plants can grow from these bulbs by simply taking one bulb from a plant and planting it. So, yan yung mga masosoft lang yung kanyang mga stem at tinatanim sa lupa underneath the ground. What are these examples? We have the garlic, we have the onions, and we have the lilies. So, those are examples of bulbs. Next, we have tubers. So, it is a thick and enlarged portion of a stem that grows underground. So, take note of that, enlarged portion of a stem. It bears small scale-like leaves and tiny buds called eyes. Parang may mata-mata siya doon. Ano-ano kaya yung mga yun? Later on, malalaman natin. When the eyes are separated from the parent plant, they may sprout new shoots and form new leaves and roots. So, doon sa mga mata-mata pala nitong halaman na to or plants na to, doon natutubo yung sanga ulit, yung plant ulit. Magi-sprout, tutubo doon. So, what are the examples of tubers? So, we have turnips, we have carrots, we have potatoes. And we can also have sweet potatoes also, yung kamote. Pwede rin yun. Next, we have rhizomes. So, what is rhizomes? A rhizome or root stocks is a plant stem found either at the soil surface or underground. So, pwedeng sa soil surface lang or pwede mong itanim. It contains a large portion called the nodes. from which roots and shoots originate. So, nodes naman ang meron dyan. Kanina yung eyes, kanina naman yung, ngayon naman ay nodes. When separated, each piece of a rhizome is capable of producing a new plant as it grows up out of the ground. So what are examples of these rhizomes? We have what you call ginger. Okay, another one, examples of natural vegetative or process is what you call suckers or shoots. An upright shoot that grows from buds found at the base of the stems of present plants. These shoots grow their own roots and can be separated from the main plant. So, pwede mo na daw siyang i-separate kapag okay na yon dun sa shoots na yon. So, the other name of suckers is shoots. So, what are examples of this? We have the banana plant and we have the pineapple. So, as you can see, tignan nyo. See? May mga anak-anak siya. So, doon mo ihiwalay na at pwede na rin siya mamuhay or pwedeng magparamin yung halaman na yan or yung plants na yan. And the last one is method is what you call the plantlets. So, what is plantlets? So, leaves of some plants will grow into a new plant if they detach from the parent plant. It grows a small plant on the edge of their leaves. So, kahit leaves yan, pwede pa rin tubuan yan ng mga small plants. So, what are the examples of this? We have the begonia and we have the katakataka. So, next is we have also another method in producing new plants using asexual method. This is what you call the artificial vegetative reproduction. So, it is also called a cloning. This type of vegetative reproduction produces a next generation identical to the parent. So, kaparehas niya. So, ano-ano yung mga prosesong pwede natin gawin dito or mga method? We can be use of cutting. It can be through grafting. It can be through marketing, layering, and then budding. So, first we have what you call the method of cutting. So, through cuttings, this is taken from any part of a plant such as a stem, leaf, or roots which can be removed from a plant in order to induce the growth of roots to produce new plant. There are three kinds of cutting, namely the leaf cutting, pwede sa kanyang leaf, stem cutting, and root cutting. So, pwedeng mabuhay yung mga yun kahit saan dyan mo ikakat. It is the most commonly used method in producing new plants. So, yan yung nakasanayan natin ginagawa. Yan yung common na ginagawa ng mga nanay natin para maparami yung mga halaman natin. So, what are the examples of cuttings? Ano yung pwede nating or mga halimbawa ng pwede nating i-cut na mga plants? So, we have what you call sugar cane, we have cassava, we have santan, we have gumamela, you have bougainvillea, you have roses, we have sampagita, and many more. So, yan yung pwede mong ikakat at mabubuhay siya. Next, we have what you call grafting. Ano naman itong grafting? So, it is the most widely used artificial method of reproducing new plants. So, this is what you call grafting, kung paano ginagawa. It is done by cutting a stem from one plant and attaching it to the stump of another plant. So, gagawa ka muna ng pa-triangulo. Yeah, it's a triangle. Tapos, doon mo ilalagay yung nakuha mong plants. Tapos, doon mo itutusok. Okay, paano yan? So, the portion of the stem cut from a tree has many buds or known as shoon. The stump to which the shoon is inserted is called the stalk. So, mali yan ha, hindi yan cake. Called yan. So, ano kaya yung mga halimbawa na pwedeng i-graft na plants? We have examples of grafting. It can be a santol, a mango, a lanzones, or a calamansi are propagated through this method, which is grafting. So, the third one is we have marketing. O yan, yan yung proseso ng marketing. So, paano naman yan? So, these methods can be used to propagate any species of woody plants. This is done by removing the bark of a healthy stem. So, tinutuklap yung bark nung yung stem para doon uugat yung halaman. And then the exposed part of the stem where the bark used to be covered with coconut husk containing a small amount of good soil. So after mong tanggalan, tuklapan is kuha ka na ngayon ng husk, yung ng nyog. Tapos lagyan mo ng ng lupa, tapos lagyan mo ng supot, tapos talian mo. So roots will soon grow on the covered stem. This stem is then cut from the tree plant to be planted. So kapag ganyan ginawa mo yung marketing, time will come, uugat na yan. Tapos once na umugat, syempre pwede mo nang putulin at pwede mo nang itanim. So that is marketing. Another one method is what you call layering. So paano naman yung layering? So this is layering. So it is a method of propagation that encourages new roots to form a new branch that are still attached to the parent plant. The stem is covered with a soil until it grows roots. When the plant is established, it is cut from the parent plant and planted it in a new location. So that is layering. So another one, we have budding. Ano naman yung budding? So yan yung process ng budding. So this method is done by making a T-shape cut as an opening of the stem of the parent plant. Then a shoon, which is normally the matured bud, cut from another plant, is inserted underneath the bark of the parent plant, which serves as the stock. The shoon must be bound surely to the stock. When the bud grows, it is cut from the mother plant and planted to a new location. So that is the method of budding. Okay, so let's proceed also on how these moss and ferns reproduce. Paano naman kaya itong dalawang to? So there are some plants that reproduce both sexually and asexually. So yan na yung pwede silang sexually, pwedeng asexually. Yan yung moss at ferns. Yan yung pwede nilang gawin. Pwede sila through sexually reproduction or through asexually. How? So moss and ferns reproduce asexually by releasing millions of spores through the air. Spores are different of seeds. They do not contain plant embryos or food stores. When the sporangia break open, the spores are released and dispersed by the wind. If the spore lands in a suitable environment, it can grow into a tiny plant called a gametophyte. So yun yung anak na niya. The spores are fed eggs are there spread through environment by wind. Asexual reproduction does not need seeds. So yan si moss and ferns. So let's see how these moss and ferns reproduce or paano sila dumadami. So yan yung illustration or yung diagram or yung video. Okay. So this time, please do remember that the two methods of asexual reproduction in plants are natural, vegetative reproduction by structure modification such as runners, bulbs, tubers, rhizomes, suckers, and plantlets. The other one is the artificial vegetative reproduction, and this type of vegetative reproduction produces the next generation that is generally identical to the parent. The various ways are cutting, grafting, marketing, layering, and budding. And we have also what you call sexual reproduction through fertilization or through pollination, and that is through self-pollination and cross-pollination. So this time, I know you are now able to answer the following questions. So read each of the numbered items carefully, then choose the letter of the correct answer. Good luck!